Welcome, and thanks for tuning in to this special deep dive brought to you by Revival Weaves of Glory Ministries. Today, we are so excited to explore a worldview where heaven isn't some far-off place, but a real, active force that can literally invade our daily lives. We're breaking down the incredible book, Heaven Invades Earth by Vincent, to really get to the heart of its core claim, that our world and the spiritual world are locked in this constant, powerful back-and-forth exchange. And this quote right here from chapter 1, it just nails the book's central premise. The idea is that heaven isn't just something we hope for in the future, right? It's a present reality in this dynamic, living exchange with our world. The core concept here, and this is so important, is that our actions, our worship, our prayers, they have a direct and immediate impact on the spiritual realm, which then, boom, boomerangs right back to shape our everyday lives. So to really wrap our heads around this, we're going to break it down into 5 parts. We'll start with the divine exchange itself. Then we'll look at the sound of heaven, how this whole thing works. After that, we'll talk about navigating these unseen realms, look at some incredible miracles and testimonies, and finally, we'll get into how we can prepare for the supernatural. All right, let's dive into part 1, the divine exchange. So what's the first step to actually seeing this invasion of heaven in our lives? Well, according to the book, it all starts with shedding what it calls a Greek mentality. You know, that old habit of separating everything, spirit, mind, and body, into different boxes. The author really challenges us on this, saying, no, that's not how it works. The spiritual and the physical are actually deeply, inseparably connected. And to make that connection feel more real, the book introduces this concept of the unseen realm. Now, this isn't just some vague, fuzzy idea. It's described as a very real dimension, just buzzing with spiritual energy. With patterns and waves, it's a place where both heavenly and demonic activity is happening. And the author claims that believers can actually learn to sense it, to feel it, and even interact with it. And our relationship with this unseen realm, it's not passive at all. It's an active exchange, what the book calls a boomerang effect. Just picture this. Our worship, our praise, even our positive actions and attitudes, they're sent out into the spiritual realm like a boomerang. And what comes back? Well, according to the text, what comes back is God's glory, His presence, His power. It's this continuous back and forth that's actively shaping our physical reality day in and day out. Okay, so if there's this constant exchange happening between heaven and earth, how does it actually travel? What's the medium? The book argues that the primary medium is sound. Think about that. Sound is presented as the carrier wave for this entire divine interaction. It's the very fabric of the exchange. And this sound exchange is absolutely a two-way street. It's fascinating how the book details it. You have sounds ascending from us on earth up to heaven, things like our worship, our praises, our words of gratitude. But then, in return, specific sounds descend from heaven back to us. And it's not just this general idea of God's glory. The book talks about specific revelations, divine guidance, and something it calls a sound of breakthrough, a sound that can literally trigger miracles right here on earth. Now, this whole concept of sound doesn't just stay in the spiritual realm, not at all. The book makes a powerful case that it directly impacts our physical bodies. The logic here is pretty interesting. Since our bodies are made up of about 70% water, we're incredibly susceptible to vibrations. So it claims that uplifting, godly music can literally improve our health and well-being. But on the flip side, harsh, or as the book puts it, demonic music can actually cause physical deterioration. It's a serious call to be intentional and mindful of the sounds we're allowing into our lives. So if this unseen realm is real, if it's active, how do you navigate it? You can't just stumble through it, right? The book argues that believers need to be equipped for much more than just a passive experience. This is a reality that demands active discernment and, at times, what the author calls spiritual warfare. This is where the book really reframes the idea of sin. It's not just a moral oopsie or a mistake. It's described as an act that literally opens a door, an entry point for negative spiritual influences to come into a person's life. And that's exactly why, according to the text, believers need to be equipped with more than just belief. They need the tools for active spiritual warfare to shut those doors and deal with these influences directly. To make this really tangible, the author actually lists specific modern practices that are presented as potentially opening us up to these harmful spiritual influences. It makes a distinction. Things like stretching or physical fitness in themselves are great, but the book argues that practices like yoga or certain martial arts, like taekwondo, can have spiritual roots and aspects that might lead to corruption. And in the same way, things like horoscopes and fortune-telling are framed as activities that directly invite demonic influence into our lives. This is deep stuff. And if you want to explore these ideas and teachings even further, I really encourage you to visit revivalwaysofgloryministries.com. There's a ton of great resources there. But you might be asking, what does all this look like in the real world? This is where the book gets really exciting. To show these principles in action, it shares these powerful personal testimonies, amazing stories of the supernatural just breaking right into the natural world. One of the most vivid stories is about a church soundman during a revival. This guy had already sacrificed a lot of his time and energy to serve, but his biggest test, his biggest sacrifice came on Super Bowl Sunday. Can you imagine? The whole country is glued to the game, and his commitment required him to be at that soundboard, serving and working the service. And the book presents the result of that sacrifice as something absolutely extraordinary. During the very next service, something the author calls glory dust, this miraculous gold-like substance, began appearing in people's Bibles. It's framed as this tangible, visible sign of God honoring that soundman's unseen, quiet commitment. Just incredible. Then there's another powerful testimony that takes place at a massive worship service. Picture this, over 10,000 people gathered together. It's just a scene of immense collective energy. The worship leader is encouraging everyone, even those in wheelchairs, to participate physically, to jump, to shout, to move their bodies, to engage with everything they have. And in that moment, the collective sound of 10,000 people worshiping together is described as becoming so powerful that it literally broke open the spiritual atmosphere. And this breakthrough, it led to spontaneous, miraculous healings. According to the testimony, people actually began rising from their wheelchairs and walking, not because someone came over and laid hands on them, but as a direct result of the sheer power of the sound of worship itself. Wow. So, after laying out this incredible framework, the divine exchange, the medium of sound, and all this evidence from personal testimonies, the book shifts gears. It concludes with a direct call to action. It moves from explaining what is happening to what you and I, the individual believers, should do about it. The book outlines a really clear 4-step process for personal preparation. And what's so important here, what's really emphasized, is that this isn't about mastering some spiritual technique. It's all about cultivating the posture of your heart. It calls for the right intent, a genuine willingness to be available for God, an open and expectant attitude, and the practice of simply immersing yourself in God's presence, a practice the book calls soaking. And listen, this preparation isn't just for your own personal spiritual growth. It's much bigger than that. It's positioned as getting ready for a massive, worldwide spiritual movement. The book actually prophesies a great harvest of souls and says it won't be driven by clever church growth strategies, but by a widespread, desperate hunger for a genuine, real encounter with the presence of God. And so the book leaves us with this powerful, provocative question. It's a direct challenge to move beyond a passive faith, to really embrace this supernatural worldview, and to start preparing for the extraordinary things God wants to do. If this explainer has sparked your interest, and I hope it has, you can find the book Heaven Invades Earth and explore so much more from Bill Vincent and his ministry by visiting revivalwaysofgloryministries.com. Thank you so much for listening to the Deep Dive podcast.